I'm Willa Brosnihan. I'm speaking here today with Mila Barry. She is a junior at Gloucester High School. Thanks, Mila, for talking with me today.
Oh,
So you are a junior. How has school being shut down due to coronavirus affected your education? And how do you think it will continue to affect your education?
I think at the beginning when they first announced the school closure, people, or especially myself, but I think people in general were sort of, afraid of how this might affect their third term grades because obviously that's, kind of a big part of the consideration in college applications is the junior year grades. But the fact that the entire nation is going through this, colleges are obviously going to take into account, everyone got a pass fail grade for the second semester of their junior year. So, it's not really going to affect people's, competitiveness or how, I guess, admittable they are to a school. So that's reassuring. Just in general, in terms of like the social part of it, it's been weird to work by myself on all of my assignments. Teachers have continued to assign work in some classes, not all, but all of the work is optional, so none of it is actually being graded because they're concerned about, inequities and ability to access technology that's necessary to get the resources that are now required to do school online. And so that's why none of it is actually counting for a grade.
Do you think if this model of people being educated continues for the rest of the school year, do you think that there should be some sort of a action taken to make it so that those resources are more accessible, or do you think that this system of having work be optional is the best way to go?
I mean, obviously, the option isn't ideal because lots of students just aren't doing anything. And I think that's across all levels as well, not just, some classes where maybe the work ethic is, I mean, I suppose it's easier to say, like, it's not like honors or AP kids are doing the work and CP kids aren't. I mean, I have kids in all, like, my classes who haven't been working, and I know kids who, aren't in my classes who are, vice versa. Like, I think it's just really spotty, the sort of response that teachers are getting. And obviously the education really can't be effective in that way. So I think that ideally we would get the resources to everyone, and there are certain, things that are being done, I think, to try and get that. I feel like I heard Comcast, it might have been Comcast, it might have been another company, are doing those like free internet packages for people who qualify if you don't get internet at home. But especially in like such a time crunch, there's not really a one size fits all solution for getting people access to, online school.
So you talked a little bit about how the college application process is being affected by this crisis. Could you elaborate a little more about what it's like to be thinking about your future in this strange time?
I think it probably more acutely is affecting the current seniors because this is around the time of year when they are starting to get their acceptances. And in theory, they should be going to campuses and visiting and trying to get a sense of, do I see myself going to school here and getting educated for the next however many years? Or do I think another place would be a better fit? And they really can't get that sense right now, which I think is probably more challenging than what I'm going through, which is really just a sense of like, are they going to change the application deadlines? Like, where are we going to stand in 6 months when this stuff really affects me more? But yeah, I think that it's probably a bigger issue for kids who are having to make these decisions right now.
So, in general, when you're talking to your peers, people in your now online classes, your friends, what kind of a feeling do you observe people having about coronavirus? How are people responding to the situation?
Well, I actually had a Zoom class this morning. My English class had a Zoom class. And our teacher was saying, how does everybody feel? How are you guys dealing with this? And the overall response is really just like bored. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm sitting in my house. Like, I just like drive around in circles because I don't want to not be social distancing, but I also don't want to sit in my house anymore. Which is kind of funny because I feel like you hear a lot about like the fear aspect of it, or like this insecurity, this anxiety. And I'm sure that's also a big piece of it. But when I've talked to people, a lot of people are just like, like, what do I do now? I can't do the things that I normally do.
Generally, young people, obviously, this is a strange time to come into adulthood. How do you think that the coronavirus pandemic is going to shape the way that our generation thinks politically, and thinks about ourselves as members of a society?
It's complicated because listening to the radio, now more than ever, I feel like there's this implication of like, how are you affecting your community? Like in particular with this epidemic, because it's so contagious. Um, People or doctors, nurses, professionals are trying to get out this message that like your actions have an effect on others, like other people's health, especially if you're not a population or not part of a population or demographic that's really in danger of contracting the virus and having serious long-term like consequences from it, and if being able to like look beyond yourself. I think that's maybe a lesson that maybe people should be learning from this. I don't know necessarily how effective it's going to be, because it's a challenging thing to do, as a society. On like in a political sense, I'd love to see it, reduce partisan polarity in the future. That would be wonderful. In general, maybe when you see this kind of a big conflict, this big challenge, you would hope that that's what would happen, that people would band together and sort of forget about party lines. Again, I don't know that that's necessarily happening, but I would hope that maybe in the future, that's the sort of long-term effect that we see.
So you talk a little bit about political polarization and the government would come together beyond party lines to address a crisis like this. How would you prefer that our federal government address a crisis like a global pandemic? Obviously, that's a big question. If you have a fully formed answer to that one, that makes a lot of sense. But,
yeah, no, it's tough. I think a lot of it. I mean, in an ideal world, I mean, it's about we need these test kits, right? We need these resources that for whatever financially, scientifically, we can't obtain, which is frustrating. But again, like that's a challenge that kind of goes beyond politics. It's just sort of a matter of, unfortunate events or our ability to like logistically figure out how to get them and distribute them. I mean, the most important thing I think is just really making sure to support the people who maybe were already financially in danger or, in a population that maybe is already vulnerable financially or, has, economics is an insecurity for them where they need that support. I mean, now more than ever is the time when we need to make sure that people have that support. There's been talk, and I know the Senate has been working on passing that like phase 3 bill for, coronavirus aid, financial aid, which is huge and important. And I think just, focusing on people who need it most and who needed it most even when there wasn't a pandemic, is probably what the federal government should be doing.
so, in your eyes, the pandemic is going to make the the wealth divide in our nation more obvious because we'll be able to see who needs things in this moment the most intensely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mila, for your insight today.
Not a problem. Thanks for chatting with me.
Of course. Bye-bye.
Bye.